and to Jack Pascoe, son of the fake Aborigine Bruce Pascoe. You know, even in woke Canada, ultra-woke Canada, they are tough on people who falsely claim they are Indigenous. Singer Buffy St. Marie has been stripped of her prestigious Order of Canada now, following claims that I've covered here, that she'd lied about being a Native American, that she wasn't what she claimed. I'm the first Indigenous winner of an Oscar. That was for the song Up Where We Belong. She was, in fact, just the daughter of white parents. What do you think the consequences would be here of something similar? Well, I was amazed to read that Jack Pascoe has just won an $860,000 taxpayer-funded grant meant for Aboriginal researchers. And I thought, hello, Jack Pascoe, son of Bruce, the fake Aborigine who wrote Dark Emu, is Aboriginal. Do our education bureaucrats ever check whether academics identifying as Aborigines really are? Because it seems not. Melbourne University has hired Bruce for a start as an enterprise professor. It also hired Jack, awarded him its Excellence in Diversity Fellowship for Aboriginal scholars. And now has also won this $860,000 grant, an Australian Research Council grant, which is meant apparently to integrate traditional ecological knowledge into the management of Ma country, that's in Victoria, to help teach Aborigines Aboriginal ways. It's incredible. Now, this particular grant goes to Aboriginal researchers. It's a Discovery Indigenous grant, that's what it's called, which the ARC says it's to back research led by Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander researchers, okay? And in fact, it's now, just late last year, singled out 3 such researchers, all identifying as Aboriginal, all of them, that it said got one of these grants. They were Jared Miles, who identifies as a Yui man, $149,000. There's Jessica Harris, who identifies as a Darkinjung woman, $326,000. And there's Jack Pascoe, named as the recipient and a chief investigator of his grant. So how is Jack Pascoe Aboriginal? Now, by the way, I don't say the other people I showed you don't have Aboriginal ancestry. I just wonder why we hand out grants to the likes of them because of their race. But back to Jack. He's Aboriginal, apparently. Is he? You see, Jack's mother does not identify as Aboriginal, which leaves just his dodgy dad, Bruce, whose career took off when he late in life claimed to be Aboriginal. He's on the right of this picture. Pascoe's fake history, Dark Emu, then won a New South Wales Premier Literary Award, meant for Aboriginal writers. Pascoe was then promoted by the ABC as an Aboriginal guru, promoted to schools. He was appointed to Melbourne University. He's been given grants for Aboriginal organisations for his farm. But there's a problem. As I've told you for years, there's no evidence that Bruce Pascoe, Jack's dad, is Aboriginal. And it's been quite funny. I mean, tragic maybe. In 1993 already, so that's, 30 years ago nearly, more. He advertised in the Courier Mail for help to prove that he had an Aboriginal great-grandmother on his mother's side. He wrote, oh, look, I've been looking for years for my Koori or Aboriginal ancestor, But Sarah Matthews now, she was born in Dudley, South Gippsland in Bunurong country. But he said she may have come to South Gippsland on a sealing vessel. Apparently he thought she might have been a Tasmanian Aboriginal brought over by sealers. Oh, bad luck, Bruce, because Sarah Matthews, the Aborigine born in Dudley, Victoria, actually turned out to be Sarah Dudley, the Englishwoman born in Dudley, England, who came here on an immigrant ship. And Pascoe did later admit he'd been wrong about her, but then said, well, wait a minute, my Aboriginal ancestor might in fact now be from my father's side and from Tasmania. But no, the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre said Pascoe's claims were false, and trained genealogists connected to the darkemuexposed.org website, they found that every single one of Pascoe's ancestors were actually of British descent, particularly from Cornwall. Now, maybe they've made a mistake. And I've asked Bruce Pascoe repeatedly, if there is, tell me what it is, but he's refused every request, not just from me, to identify his Aboriginal ancestor. And still calls himself Aboriginal. Funny thing is, got ambushed, I think. 3 years ago, he went on SBS and he was challenged by, of all people, presenter Carla Grant, herself Aboriginal, and he made this admission.
Bruce, you wrote Dark Emu, a bestseller about Aboriginal society at the time of first contact. How do you identify?
I identify as Yuin and Boonwurrung and Tasmanian because we can trace family back to those regions.
Do other members of your family agree you all have Aboriginal heritage?
Some do, many don't.
Still, son Jack must at least have believed his dad, because Jack too identifies now as Yuin on the websites of the Melbourne University and the Biodiversity Council, funded by 11 universities. This council is one of 11 lead councillors. So I wrote to Jack Pascoe last week. I said, Jack, you're Aboriginal? How? I asked two questions specifically. Who is your apical Aboriginal ancestor? That's the first in your bloodline, right, that you know of. And what genealogical evidence do you have of your Aboriginality, given that this is $860,000 of taxpayer money that was meant for Aboriginal researchers? So I'm tired to ask. Jack did not reply. But Melbourne University's Dean of Science, Professor Moira O'Brien, did. And her reply is such a non-response that I will quote it in full. Dr. Jack Pascoe is a valued and respected member of the academic community, and his extensive knowledge and experience makes a significant contribution to public knowledge and land management. None of which I dispute. I haven't asked about that. She goes on, Dr. Pascoe fulfilled the requirements for his Australian Research Council grant. I wrote back saying, you realise, of course, that you've answered not a single question I've put. And I said, is there a reason for this? A concession that Jack Pascoe is not Aboriginal or cannot prove it? No response, Your Worship. So we get this grant meant for Aborigines handed to the son of a man who isn't Aboriginal by all the public evidence, and the university doesn't think that's an issue. That's your money. Joining me is the man who uncovered this story and wrote about it on his superb website, darkemuexposed.org, Roger Kaj. Roger Kaj, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, Jack Pascoe, he didn't answer my email. Melbourne University's Dean of Science did. But she didn't answer the actual questions I put, like who was his Aboriginal ancestor and where was Jack Pascoe's proof that he's Aboriginal? Is this response from the university good enough?
Well, I don't think so, Andrew, and there's quite a few reasons as to why it's not. But initially, it's just the ethical and moral position of it. If I'm driving down the highway in a car and the police pull me over and they say, excuse me, sir, show me your licence, I can't turn to them and say, look, I identify as a driver. Everyone else on the road recognises me as a driver. I'm offended that you're asking to see my licence. I mean, it's ridiculous. So here's Dr. Pascoe, and he could be a really good scientist for all I know, but he's received just under $900,000 for a grant. It's an Indigenous grant from the taxpayer, from the Australian government. And my understanding is part of that process is the lead investigators have to be Indigenous. And he's saying he's Indigenous, he's saying he's Yuin. So I don't see why it's not incumbent on him to satisfy me as the taxpayer and say, all right, I'm going to do all this research at uni. I've got 900,000. Here you go, Roger. I am Indigenous, so I'm entitled to it. But when I write to him, I don't get an answer.
Yes, there you go. I mean, like you say, he could be an excellent guy, and he might not have done this knowing that he wasn't Aboriginal. It might be he honestly believed he was Aboriginal, given what his father's been telling him. But of course, you in particular have shown that Bruce Pascoe, his father, does not have any Aboriginality. And I just think we need to be told. I mean, if this is for Aboriginal academics, we need to know that it's going to Aboriginal academics. That's a pretty simple proposition. Now, you have asked similar questions, though, Roger, of other universities who've employed academics who claim to be Aboriginal, some holding positions for Aborigines, when your researchers, your genealogical researchers, going through the records, have found out they probably, almost certainly, are not. How often has this happened, and have you ever got a straight answer from a university?
No, I've never got a straight answer from the university. I've got possibly 1 or 2 legal letters from the person involved threatening to sue me, but then they never go beyond that. I've never actually got an answer from a university, only a couple from the academics I've challenged, but then they backed off when they realised we're correct. So what we're doing now, we've got some lawyers on our team, so we're going to the next level. So, for example, in 2013, Professor Bronwyn Carlson applied for the Stanner Award, and I've actually, under Freedom of Information, been able to get the application form that she filled in, trying to find out how she convinced them that she was Aboriginal, right? And basically, the form says, I've supported my claim to indigeneity through supplying. Please tick one of the following 2 options. A confirmation of Aboriginality, which is a certificate from an Aboriginal corporation. She didn't tick that box. Or providing the details of 2 referees who can vouch for me, right? And she's ticked that box. And there's 2 referees, but their names have been blacked out for privacy. That's okay. But basically now, to convince universities or the government that you're Aboriginal, you don't need birth certificates, you don't need certificate of Aboriginality. You just need to find 2 mates down the pub that will vouch for you. And as long as they're culturally appropriate, there you go. So she collected that award. And since then, she's received something like 4 government grants from $200,000 to $500,000 from Macquarie University. When I contacted Macquarie University and Professor Bronwyn Carlson, I provided all the information and I challenged her to provide the proof that she was Aboriginal. She did not say she was not Aboriginal, but what she did, she removed the reference to her Aboriginal heritage, which used to be on her university biographical page. So she hasn't actually admitted she's not Aboriginal, but she started to move the reference away that she's claiming to be Aboriginal.
What is the issue here? Because as far as I can tell, look, I can't even keep up with all the people that you've been questioning here. I'd say they're from about 5 or 6 universities now, something like that. And not one has given an appropriate answer to your questions. I mean, what is the problem here? Why are they so scared of being honest and transparent?
Because truth, if you shine a light on the truth, they're exposed. What it is at the moment is they're hiding behind, it's not actually law. This 3-part test that you have to be dissent, self-identify and be recognised, that's only very specific to some legislation where it's law. In the general population, you just have people say, where's your dissent? Well, they say we don't demand firm evidence. All we need someone is to sign a stat dec. That's evidence enough for us. So technically, the universities are not breaking the law. They're making millions of dollars because by having more Indigenous students and professors, they get more government grants, right? So, and fakes make very good Aboriginal academics. In some ways, I shouldn't say this, but sometimes they make a better Aboriginal academic than a real Aboriginal person because they come from different backgrounds and they know the talk, they know how to speak, they know how to do it. And that's why the universities are very scared because it's a cash cow. And if the Vice Chancellor's on $1 million or $1.5 million, he needs all the money he can get. Simple as that.
Rozakaj, you have done brilliant work on darkemuexposed.org trying to uncover some of this. It's an absolute scandal. And the biggest scandal for me is that even though you've done all the work, almost no media organisation is picking up on this and asking the same questions themselves. But you keep doing it, and I think there'll be a breakthrough one day. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.